Last year, I sat right here at this same dinner table. My father stood up with his glass, beaming, to toast my siblings' latest accomplishments. Then he turned to me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes and said, "And Natalie, well, she's still figuring things out." The table erupted in laughter. I laughed too, because when you're the family disappointment, that's what you do, you smile. You nod, and you make yourself small. Tonight, I showed up on time again. Same plain navy dress, same 10-year-old sedan parked in the circular driveway. Nothing about me looked different, and that was entirely intentional, because while they were busy planning trust fund allocations and discussing Ivy League engagement parties, I was building something, quietly, alone. From a borrowed storage unit and a secondhand laptop, I built a logistics AI startup that, just this week, hit a valuation of $100 million. But I hadn't told them. Not yet. I wanted to wait. I thought maybe I'd just sit through dinner like always, invisible and unremarkable, until the moment came. The moment my assistant called during the main course and said a word none of them had ever associated with me before. Theo. Growing up as a Brooks meant constantly being measured against a ruler you never got to choose. My older brother Daniel, the golden boy. He could spell Harvard before he lost his first tooth. He was winning debate championships by middle school, interning for senators at 16, and walking across the Yale graduation stage magna cum laude before heading straight into Georgetown Law. My parents were obsessed with him. He spoke their language legacy, law, prestige. Then there was Emily, the golden daughter, always polished, always poised. She studied international relations at Brown, and now she's the communications director for a rising congresswoman. Mom used to say Emily's voice was made for press conferences. I always thought it was trained for them. And then there was me, Natalie, the one who used to take apart the family toaster to see how it worked. The girl who built an inventory tracking app during a summer job at a flower shop. I wasn't rebellious, just uninterested in the script everyone else followed. My parents didn't get it. And eventually, they stopped trying. They tolerated my passion for logistics, the way you tolerate a neighbor's weird lawn statue, silently disapproving, occasionally polite, always wishing it would disappear. When I told them I was going to Carnegie Mellon for undergrad, they blinked like I'd said I was joining the circus. "Isn't that a science school?" my mom asked, genuinely baffled. At family functions, I was introduced as, "This is Natalie. She's in, tech, I think." No one asked what I actually did. No one wanted to know. And that's what hurt, not the indifference, but knowing that no matter how hard I worked, I would never be celebrated the way Daniel and Emily were. Their paths were expected, polished, mine, gravel and grit. I had to build it myself, even now. Walking into the Brooks family's coastal Maine estate for the annual holiday gathering, I felt it, that same quiet weight pressing down on my chest. The ancestral paintings, the marble floors, everyone greeting each other like they were at a campaign fundraiser. The Brooks name meant power. It got you into boardrooms, into private clubs, into legacy law firms. But for me, it meant one thing: you don't belong. But I didn't come tonight to belong. I came to see how they'd react not to what I said, but to what they never saw coming. Maybe I came for the girl I used to be, the one who thought love was earned through a perfect resume. She's gone now, but I wanted her to witness something. I wanted her to see what happens when the family underdog builds her own throne. The first time I realized how truly alone I was in this family wasn't at a dinner table. It was at my MIT graduation. I stood in a crowd of black caps and proud parents, clutching a diploma I had bled for, double major in systems engineering and applied analytics. Perfect GPA, a published thesis on predictive logistics. They called my name. The auditorium clapped, and I looked up to the family section. Empty seats. Daniel was at a political summit overseas. Emily was helping run a Senate fundraiser. My parents at a gala in Martha's Vineyard with one of Dad's old law partners. That morning, my mom had texted, "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," followed by a photo of the dress she was wearing that night. People think defining moments are loud and dramatic, but sometimes they're silent. That moment didn't break me, but it changed me. It taught me to stop waiting for their applause. After graduation, I took a job at a mid-sized distribution tech firm in Ohio. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. I watched hospitals receive equipment late because no one adjusted for road closures. I watched food deliveries fail because no one planned for snow. So I started writing, not a novel, a notebook, ideas, frustrations, algorithms I wanted to try. At Thanksgiving, no one asked how work was going. My dad asked if I'd figured out what I wanted to be yet. Emily suggested I look into logistics for political campaigns, and you'd be great at that, she said. I laughed. I prefer real-world chaos over political theater. They laughed too, but not kindly. By then, I'd already begun coding the first lines of what would become SwiftRoute, a machine learning system designed to predict last-mile delivery disruptions using real-time data, weather, traffic, route history. I volunteered at a food bank, helping optimize their routes to get meals to seniors faster. No one paid me, but for the first time, I didn't feel like the family disappointment. I felt useful, needed. That was the seed of something not just a business, but a life built outside their gaze. And still, I kept attending family gatherings. Not because I wanted to, but because some stubborn part of me still hoped maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. It never was. Each Christmas, we returned to that colonial estate. White pillars, lake views, a dining room lined with oil paintings of ancestors who probably signed treaties with feather pens. It was a place built for legacy, and I was treated like the typo. Daniel would hold court, sharing political gossip and his latest podcast numbers. Emily would talk about rewriting speeches 2 minutes before airtime to save her candidate's image. My parents beamed, proud hosts of the American elite. Then they'd glance at me. So, Natalie, Uncle Richard would say, swirling his wine, still delivering things. That year, I just closed our first enterprise contract with a national medical supplier, but I just smiled and said, "Yep, still delivering." Mom added, "She's very hands-on, boots on the ground." She said it like I'd joined the Peace Corps. I didn't correct her. What was the point? When I tried to explain SwiftRoute, someone would interrupt, or worse, nod with that distant smile, the one that said, "We stopped listening 10 seconds ago." So I started dressing the part. Same cardigan every year, same car, same low-profile wine gift. The less remarkable I appeared, the fewer questions they asked. One brunch, Emily leaned over and whispered, "You should really think about branding. People take you more seriously when you look expensive." I wanted to ask if she thought software engineers came wrapped in gold foil. Instead, I bit into my scone and nodded. Let them think I was harmless. Because the truth was, I wasn't. I was building something real. And one day, I wouldn't need to explain it because they'd have no choice but to see it. Dinner started the way it always did, like a political fundraiser, disguised as a family gathering. The chandelier above the table sparkled with excessive intent, casting a golden hue over a table set for legacy. We were seated by rank, not affection. My father at the head, mother opposite him, Daniel to his right, Emily to her left, and me positioned conveniently behind a floral arrangement so large it could have had its own zip code. The first course was sea bass, imported from somewhere with a name designed to make you feel poor. Everyone murmured appropriate sounds of approval. Emily announced she'd been invited to a White House roundtable. Daniel shared insider polling numbers and whispered gossip about a senator's affair. My mother dabbed her mouth with a linen napkin, smiling like she was on the cover of Town and Country. And then, it happened. My father cleared his throat, a subtle, rehearsed sound that signaled everyone to hush. The Brooks signal for prepare for a speech. We wanted to take a moment, he began, swirling his Bordeaux with the same flourish he used to reject legal proposals, to talk about a few updates regarding the family's financial structure. My stomach tightened, but I kept my face neutral. Emily straightened in her chair. Daniel's fingers interlaced as he leaned forward, visibly expectant. With Daniel preparing his congressional run, my father said, and Emily's incredible contributions in the political sphere, your mother and I have decided it's time to begin transitioning for certain trust assets. He turned to Daniel first, raising his glass. The Nantucket property will officially transfer to your name by January. Applause. Toasts. Gratitude. Then to Emily. Your education fund has been converted into a long-term investment portfolio. The full details are with our financial advisor. More applause. My mother beamed like her daughter had just negotiated world peace. I kept eating. Then came the pause. That breath between sentences. The shift in energy. My mother's jaw tensed. And Natalie, my father said, finally turning to face me with a voice soft enough to sound like compassion, but not quite convincing. We've decided it's best to hold off on any major distributions until there's more clarity around your professional trajectory. Clarity. He said it like I was an unstable weather system. My mother jumped in quickly. This isn't a punishment. Darling, we just think it's time you made some more traditional choices. Something stable. Something visible. Daniel, ever the strategist, added, your work isn't really public. It's hard for our advisors to assess value. Emily took a sip of wine and chimed in with a gentle, it's probably for the best. Startups are so risky. I swallowed not the food, but the fury rising in my throat. They'd rehearsed this. They'd planned to cut me out under the cover of lobster risotto and white linen. I placed my fork down deliberately. So just to clarify, I said calmly, I'm being excluded from the trust because I didn't follow the family script. My mother twisted her wedding band. Not excluded. Just paused. No vacation property. No family fund shares. No resources, I said, taking each one off like items on a receipt, but not excluded. Silence fell. Tense. Waiting silence. Like the table itself was holding its breath for me to fall apart. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. Understood. Just then, my phone buzzed in my lap. Once. Then again. Then a third time in rapid succession. Not normal. I glanced down and saw the name Alicia Thompson, my COO, the only person with permission to break the silence of a Brooks dinner. I stood slowly, excusing myself with a practiced grace. Pardon me, my father sighed, visibly irritated. Really, Natalie? But I was already walking toward the hallway, phone pressed to my ear. Alicia, I whispered. Her voice was clear, loud enough for the acoustics of the dining room to carry it. SoftBank just confirmed. Natalie, 40 million. Wire is in. Our valuation is now official 100 million. Pre-IPO. The silence behind me wasn't silent at all. It was seismic. I turned slightly, still holding the phone to my ear. Alicia continued, blissfully unaware she had an audience. Goldman wants to finalize the Series B press release tonight. Also, your Forbes interview for top 30 under 30 founders is locked for Monday. Oh, and Tokyo's asking if you're ready for Q2 expansion. Every chair creaked as my family recalibrated. I nodded slowly, eyes locked on the chandelier above the table. That's great, I said calmly. Schedule the call for 9 tomorrow. Tell Goldman I'll send my notes tonight. Got it, CEO, Alicia said. Talk soon. I ended the call and turned back to the room. My father's wine glass hovered midair. Forgotten. My mother's fork was still raised halfway. Daniel stared like he was watching a live plot twist. Emily looked like someone had driven a truck through her carefully curated worldview. I walked back to my seat and sat down. And then, Aunt Claire, bless her, the family's only unfiltered human being, raised her glass and said, well, I think that deserves a proper toast. She winked. My mother recovered first. Natalie, she breathed, suddenly syrup sweet. Why didn't you tell us? My father leaned in. SoftBank, as in SoftBank, and Goldman's involved. Emily blinked rapidly. Wait, you're a CEO? I took a long sip of wine, then smiled. I thought startups were risky. No one laughed. Not this time. Instead, as if cued, they all began talking at once. Natalie, we should have had this conversation earlier, my father said, his tone shifting from cold to collaborative in a heartbeat. If we'd known the scale of your operation, we could have aligned investment strategies. Daniel jumped in. Goldman Sachs. That's big. That gives you weight. We could position this as a Brooks Innovation Initiative. Emily followed. We're hosting a healthcare reform panel next month. Brian, my boss, would love to feature you. It's perfect. Perfect. For them, my mother placed a hand gently on mine. Sweetheart, I know we've been cautious, but you have to understand, we were just worried about you. I looked down at her hand. Perfectly manicured, wedding ring flashing. The same hand that signed me out of the trust hours earlier. I pulled mine away. Worried, I repeated. That's funny, because no one's asked how I've been in years. You weren't worried. You were embarrassed. They stiffened. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. You spent a decade minimizing everything I've done. You laughed when I said I was building software. You called it a phase? A hobby? You told people I was between jobs, even when I was piloting a logistics transformation across 10 states. Daniel cleared his throat. Come on, Nat. You know, we were just teasing. No, I cut in. You were diminishing me because it made you feel more comfortable. They all looked uncomfortable now. And now that you know there's money involved, suddenly I'm not the weird one anymore. I'm a strategic asset. Emily's voice cracked just slightly. That's not fair. We've always believed in you. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Then name my company. Silence. I waited. Nothing. It's called SwiftRoute, I said, evenly. We optimize last-mile delivery for medical supply chains using predictive AI. We operate in 27 states. We have 213 distribution partners and a 96% success rate. My father blinked. That's impressive. Yes, I said. It is. He straightened, defaulting to boardroom mode. Well then, we should revisit your place in the trust. Clearly, the situation has evolved. No, I said, voice like steel. Nothing has evolved. Not in the last 20 minutes. The only thing that's changed is your perception of me. You're overreacting. My mother whispered. No, I said. I'm responding. There's a difference. Daniel opened his mouth again, but I held up a hand. Let me be very clear. I'm not looking for family investments. I don't need board seats or campaign branding. SwiftRoute is fully funded. Our board is full. Our investors saw the value long before you did. Emily leaned in, her voice tinged with something that almost sounded like hurt. So what? Now we're not part of your story. I looked at her, then at all of them, then at the table filled with silverware, crystal, and people who had never made room for me until the room was full of money. You're not part of this story, I said, because you chose not to be when it actually mattered. Then I stood, reached for my phone, and said, I have a team call in the morning, with people who believed before the valuation hit 9 digits. I turned to walk away. Wait, my father said, rising slightly. We should talk this through. We did, I replied, over sea bass and betrayal. And with that, I stepped into the hallway as my phone buzzed again. Alicia, Forbes cover confirmed. Tokyo expansion greenlit. Congrats. CO. I smiled, slid the phone into my clutch, and didn't look back. The next day, I didn't return any of their calls. Not Daniel's carefully worded text that read, let's connect soon. I think there's a lot of exciting crossover potential between what you're building and some of my policy initiatives. Not Emily's voicemail, where she tried her best to sound casual. Hey, Nat, I think we should reset. I've always admired your drive. You know. Let's talk. Not even my father's email. Subject line. Discussion proposal. Instead, I responded to one message, the only one that mattered. It was from Alicia. She'd sent me a draft of our press release, the $100 million valuation, the upcoming expansion into Japan, the Series B close, and at the bottom, a final paragraph I'd quietly asked her to include. We're proud to announce the launch of the Brooks Foundation, a $5 million initiative to support young women in supply chain tech, particularly those from underrepresented communities. That was the only time the Brooks name would appear in the press release, and this time, it was on my terms. I chose the name not to honor the family that sidelined me, but to reclaim it. For years, Brooks had meant exclusion being cut out of inheritance talks, investment meetings, even basic recognition. Now, it would mean something else, something powerful, something forward-looking, a key, not to the Brooks legacy, but to unlocking opportunity for girls like me, girls who didn't talk the part, didn't wear the part, but saw systems, saw possibilities, and believed they could fix things. We held the foundation's launch event at our headquarters in Boston. Not a ballroom, not a vineyard, just the SwiftRoute warehouse office where everything had started concrete floors. Whiteboards stained with marker ghosts, laptops running hot from all-night coding sessions. There were no celebrity guests, no media circus, just my team, a few local educators, and 50 high school girls from underserved schools. We gave them a tour of the facility. Our engineers walked them through how we modeled delivery failure points, how data moved medicine, how real-world logistics could actually save lives. I watched their faces light up. Their eyes widened, not because we handed them a slick pitch, but because we showed them how math and machines could move the world. That night, after everyone left, I got a text from my mother. We read about your foundation. That's extraordinary. Natalie, would you consider letting the family host a fundraiser for it at the Vineyard House? I stared at the screen for a long time. It was the first time she had ever called my work extraordinary. but still host a fundraiser at the house where they toasted each other while excluding me from the table. I didn't reply. Instead, I took a cab to the edge of Cambridge, to a tiny flower shop that still had the same squeaky bell on the door and the same woman behind the counter. Mrs. Reed. She smiled when she saw me. May, she said, still calling me by my middle name. Look at you. Mrs. Reed had given me my first summer job when I was 16. She paid me in day-old muffins and barely enough cash to cover bus fare. But more than that, she was the first person who looked at my messy inventory spreadsheet and said, "You know, you're good at this." I handed her an envelope with a note, instructions, and a business card. The next morning, a bouquet of white lilies was delivered to the Brooks estate. The card read, "Thank you for the offer. The foundation already has a venue, a warehouse, the one where I built everything you once called a phase." Warmly, Natalie. A month later, I was invited to speak at a public high school in Baltimore, an all-girls STEM academy and tucked between auto shops and boarded-up convenience stores. There was no red carpet, no news coverage, just a folding chair on a small auditorium stage, and about 50 girls with notebooks and sharp eyes. I told them the real story, not the glossy version, but the truth about how SwiftRoute was born in a storage unit, built from scratch after long days at a tech job that barely paid. I told them about staying up until 3 a.m. debugging code, about delivering pizza on weekends to afford cloud server space, about how I once taught myself GIS mapping using YouTube tutorials and sheer desperation. I told them about supply chain failures that delayed insulin shipments, how one wrong route could mean someone didn't get their dialysis machine on time. That logistics wasn't about trucks, it was about lives. They listened like it mattered. During the Q&A, a girl in the second row raised her hand. She looked about 15. She had braids, chipped nail polish, and a stare that felt way too familiar. "My parents think logistics is just truck driving," she said. "They want me to be a doctor or a lawyer, something serious." "Did your family support you?" I paused. The air felt heavy with her question. "No," I said finally. "Not at first. Not when it really mattered." She looked down, disappointed, like I'd confirmed her fears, but then I added, "What I've learned is sometimes the people closest to us can't see us. Not because we're invisible, but because they only recognize versions of themselves." The room went quiet. "You don't have to fight them," I said. "You just have to build something they can't ignore. Something so undeniably yours that their understanding becomes irrelevant." She nodded slowly, and I knew she got it. After the talk, one of the teachers gave me a mug as a thank you gift. It was white with black text. It read, "Shipping confidence since 2023. I laughed honest, full-body laughter that I hadn't felt in weeks. That night, back in my loft, I stood by the window overlooking Boston Harbor. My phone buzzed again. Another missed call from Daniel. A voicemail from my mother. "We're thinking of hosting a holiday gathering this year. Would love to see you. No pressure." "Of course," Emily had texted. "Brian's campaign would still love your support, even just a quote for our healthcare platform. Let me know." I didn't reply. Instead, I picked up an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside were a dozen thank you cards, handwritten, from the girls in Baltimore. One of them said, in pencil, "Thank you for proving that a girl like me can run the whole system." I slipped that card into the top drawer of my desk right next to another envelope. A letter I'd received a year earlier from the family's lawyer, formally outlining my exclusion from trust allocations pending future clarity. One piece of paper had erased me. The other reminded me that I exist and that I matter in ways they never even tried to understand. A few days later, I hosted a quiet dinner at the warehouse with my team. No photographers, no gala gowns, just takeout boxes, laughter, and the people who had believed in me from day one. As the evening wound down, Alicia handed me one last package, a bouquet of peonies. No card, just a knowing look between us. I placed them on the windowsill, beside a framed photo of the warehouse in its earliest days. Concrete floors, cardboard desks, a space heater we had to share. No comfort, no cushion, just vision. That's what I built, not just a company. A legacy. Mine. Weeks passed. The Forbes cover went live. My photo shot in the corner office of our Boston headquarters, standing in front of the same whiteboard where I had once mapped out supply routes with a dry erase marker that barely worked, was splashed across their homepage with a headline that read, "The Systems Thinker: How Natalie Brooks Quietly Built a $100 million Logistics Empire." My inbox exploded. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible. I was in panels, on podcasts, invited to speak at tech summits and female founder forums. But I wasn't building this to be seen. I never was. I was building because someone had to fix the parts of the world everyone else overlooked. Hospitals don't care about buzzwords. They care about medicine arriving on time. Food banks don't need press releases. They need accurate deliveries before the weekend storm hits. My work didn't trend, but it moved. I got used to being in motion. Still, every so often, a familiar name would pop up on my phone screen. Daniel, Emily. Even my father, I'd let the calls go to voicemail. The texts were polite, strategic, all some version of, we should align, we could support the foundation. Let's collaborate. And always, let's catch up soon. But I wasn't interested in catching up. I was busy moving forward. That's when an opportunity came from the mayor's office of New York City. They were launching an emergency logistics task force and asked if SwiftRoute could help architect a rapid deployment system for medical supplies. We didn't hesitate. Our team got to work immediately, coordinating with municipal systems, modeling peak hour disruptions, forecasting demand surges across boroughs. In the middle of that chaos, I got another email from my mother. Your grandmother's birthday is next month. We're hosting something small, just family. It would mean a lot if you came. This time, I stared at the message longer than usual. My grandmother, elegant, sharp-witted, always the observer in the background of our family's performances, was turning 90. I wasn't going to go, but then I thought about something she told me once. When I was 13 and trying to solder a homemade GPS tracker in the kitchen, while everyone else was in the drawing room rehearsing their political smiles. You're not loud, she'd said, but one day they'll notice the noise you make. So I went. I didn't dress like a CEO, just a simple, clean pantsuit. No designer labels, no dramatic entrances. The Brooks estate looked exactly the same. Polished, powerful, performative. This time, though, I noticed something different. When I stepped through the door, the murmurs stopped. Conversations paused, eyes found me, then hesitated. It was subtle, but it was there. Recognition. Daniel came up first, wine in hand, smile calibrated like a campaign photo. Nat, he said, glad you're here. You've been busy. I said. I've been thinking. If you ever want to position SwiftRoute as part of an infrastructure reform proposal, let me know. I've got contacts at DOT and some think tanks that could be a good fit. Appreciate it. I said, we're good for now. He blinked, clearly unused to hearing no from a sibling. Emily appeared next. She hugged me. Perfume strong. Expression polished. Everyone's talking about the Forbes piece. She said, you looked great. Very grounded. Thanks, I said. That's kind of the point. She hesitated. Brian still wants you for the campaign panel. By the way, tell him I said thank you, I replied. But we've already got our own initiatives focused on healthcare logistics. No politics involved. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Finally, my mother approached. She didn't lead with a compliment, just a small, slow breath. I saw the video from the Baltimore school, she said. The way those girls looked at you, it was beautiful. I said nothing. You're doing something important. Natalie. I nodded. I always was. She flinched slightly, not from the words, but from realizing they were true. Later that evening, as the family gathered around the piano for a sing-along, another long-standing Brooks tradition, I slipped into the kitchen. My grandmother was there, sitting with a cup of tea, away from the noise. She looked up at me and smiled. There she is, she said. You knew, didn't you? I asked. Of course, she said softly. I didn't need a press release to see what you were building. Not all builders use hammers. I sat next to her and took a long breath. I think I kept waiting for them to clap. I admitted, they never clapped for the ones who scared them, she said. We stayed like that for a while. No performance, no inheritance, just presence. As I left the estate that night, I didn't look back. There was nothing left to chase, no seat at their table I needed anymore. Instead, I drove to our warehouse office. Lights were still on. Alicia was inside, working late with our operations lead. They were finalizing specs for the NYC project, arguing over sensor data, laughing between debates. My team, my people. I joined them, rolled up my sleeves, opened my laptop. Because at the end of the day, legacy isn't built in boardrooms. It's built in the after-hours grind, in the systems no one sees, in the lives we change when no one's watching. A week later, I stood on a panel at a logistics innovation summit in Chicago. I wasn't introduced as someone's daughter or sister. I was introduced as Natalie Brooks, founder and CEO of SwiftRoute. I spoke for 20 minutes. Afterward, a young woman came up to me. She looked nervous. Maybe 23. Engineering student. She fidgeted with her badge and finally said, "I've always wanted to be in tech, but I thought I needed to look like them, act like them. Polished, pedigreed." I smiled and said, "You don't need polish. You need purpose." She beamed. I handed her my card and said, "Call me when you start your company. We'll talk fulfillment strategies." She nodded, eyes wide, mind racing. That night, alone in my hotel room, I looked out at the skyline and realized something. I'd spent so many years trying to make the Brooks family proud, but they were never the audience I was meant to serve. I wasn't building for them. I was building for her. And every girl like her, for the ones who build systems, not speeches, who carry weight, not titles, who don't ask for permission to be powerful, because we're not here to inherit old legacies. We're here to write new ones. And this one, it has my name on it. Natalie Brooks, CEO, builder, system thinker, legacy rewriter,